Based on these are some very impressive speakers so far, and based on what they've said, I think I'm preaching to the choir when I say that I consider Donald Trump to be a dangerous maniac. And watching his speeches online, one gets the sense that many of his supporters are supremely vile, particularly when protesters are ejected. I have to take pains to remember that they don't all share his bigotry, and that hate as unbridled and rancorous as his is not enough to bind these masses of working-class white people around him, that they are dispossessed and enslaved by the same globalizing capital that enslaves us all. And as workers, they belong to the left, but are they instead left out? Is there something wrong with them, or is there something wrong with nominally left-wing coalitions of recent history? I'm actually from near Syracuse. I'm from Madison County, where there are more cows than people. My area is overwhelmingly white and rural or suburban. I wrote an opinion piece for my town's newspaper a few months ago explaining to them my reasons for becoming a Democrat. I reminded my neighbors that this city's massive and diverse population ensures that time after time we anoint a Democrat and not a Republican as our presidential contender, and that Hillary Clinton is just so horrible that we have got to get together and ensure that Sanders gets the nomination instead. He is the reason I joined. I was smugly independent before last year. Since joining that party, I'm a little disgusted, but I should not have been surprised the amount of apologism that there is for Hillary Clinton, who's a hypocrite and a criminal. But too many working people in my area can't imagine themselves getting behind Sanders as I've done, much less anything more radical or truly progressive than Sanders. I think some of this resistance is owed to the culture war. I've been a cashier, a produce clerk, a library clerk, and a landscaper. And I can't tell you the number of working people I've met who, because of abortion or marriage equality or something like that, anything but our common class struggle, would never vote for a Democrat. I've always been pro-choice, and I've always believed in marriage equality. But in my view, these questions are absolutely peripheral. The siren song of electoralism is that you can come to identify with the richest people, the Wall Street oozers and exploiters, over these culture war questions, which are at best of secondary importance. If in this identification, their victories appear to be your victories. But if you've been a cashier, as I have, handling money and merchandise for hours, bored out of your mind, then you've noticed that there are cashiers, queer and straight, there are cashiers of every race, and there are female as well as male cashiers. But we're all doing the same mind-numbing thing for which we are so sorely undercompensated, while Wall Street holds the lash and engorges itself in our sweat. The rich don't get rich through hard work or gumption. They get rich on the backs of poor and working people. So it doesn't really matter so much the ratio of overpaid male CEOs to overpaid female CEOs. What matters is that parasites are parasites no matter their gender. Caitlyn Jenner caused an enormous stir. She brought a lot of haters and well-wishers out of the woodwork. But think about the plight of trans women in men's prison. While they're part of the conversation in ways most bookish and meaningless, they do not partake of Ms. Jenner's caviar, or her money, or her fabulous wardrobe, or her ungodly privilege. Would these women not be far better served by general prison reform to address their torment, not to mention overcrowded prisons, draconian and excessive sentencing, punitive drug laws, and the national shame and human rights crisis of solitary confinement? Now, they say Trump has freedom of action. They say that Wall Street doesn't have strings on him. But this billionaire does not want to raise the minimum wage, and he wants to further swell our bloated military and further empower murderous policemen over the people. So for these reasons, he's obviously our class enemy. But Mrs. Clinton is just as much our enemy, a multimillionaire who takes money from the private prison lobby and who from 1986 to 1992 served on Walmart's board of directors, even in the midst of their merciless and thuggish resistance to the unions trying to get a better life for workers there. So she's a class warrior of the worst kind because she's on the wrong team. To the latte liberals who would never shop at Walmart, I want to ask them, would you vote for one of its bosses? Many's the barista serving your latte who wouldn't be caught dead voting for Clinton, and it speaks to her poisonous cunning that she just might be able to lie her way into the White House. Now, the average donation for the Sanders campaign has been $27. and he's accumulated more individual donations to his campaign than any other candidate in history. I myself gave him $12. He doesn't take super PAC money, which means he's not being bribed by the corporate elite as Clinton is. Like Trump, Sanders is not beholden to these elites, but Trump is one of them, and Sanders one of us. America did not have, in our era, a serious major political party that could speak for working people until Sanders arrived to seize the Democrats as his vehicle. In Bernie Sanders' repeated calls for political revolution, in the enthusiasm and passionate citizenship of those standing behind him, I don't think it's impossible that we might transform the Democratic Party into a workers' party. It's gone through many transformations in the past, being as it is the oldest continuously functioning party on earth, which I think is very fitting, considering, as Sanders said in his speech to Liberty University, his politics are in line with the wisdom of all the religion on earth, and he very eloquently summarized his position in the same speech as follows. Money and wealth should serve the people should not have to serve money and wealth. Now, people hold abortion and marriage equality and so on very dear, and on these questions I'm in agreement with Sanders, clearly. But I also find myself in agreement with Mrs. Clinton, at least until she evolves again. I don't think the Democratic Party should abandon its commitment to those things, but the present era shows that when you foreground those questions, it becomes like a thin veneer to hide but in no way repairing the irreconcilable split between, in this case, Democrats, rich and poor, the exploiters and the exploited. As long as cultural questions remain in the foreground, not only will the likes of Clinton and Schumer and Cuomo continue to wreak their mischief and remain Democrats, albeit in name only, but a true mass movement of American workers united as workers and not as social liberals or social conservatives will remain impossible. And for people caught up on questions of social conservatism versus social liberalism, I think it's best to remember that the rich actually don't care and needn't care about these questions. Consider Roe versus Wade. If Roe versus Wade were overturned, it would be like before. For the poor, purposeful miscarriages and unwanted children and dead women. But the rich could just jet off to some other country or bribe a sympathetic concierge doctor to perform the procedure. So in practical terms, the right of the rich to secure an abortion cannot be taken away, and that won't change no matter who we vote for in 2016. Or consider the war on drugs and on prostitution. Think about the enormous amount of effort and energy spent perpetuating those policies and the miseries arising from them. But the richest of rich men can spend the weekend inhaling the purest cocaine from the bodies of the priciest escorts, and no war on drugs or war on vice is going to stop him. So he didn't really care about that either. And when you are so rich that you don't have to follow the rules, that's what makes Citizens United and the super PACs and Goldman Sachs and the Koch brothers and all the rest so hideously offensive. Is that for them to advocate for the rights of women or for the fetus, or to pour heaps of money toward promoting or combating the war on drugs, it's all completely disingenuous and hypocritical when the rules aren't going to affect them anyway. And that attitude is perhaps unsurprising considering the connections between psychopathy and high finance. Researchers at the University of Surrey concluded that compared to criminal psychiatric patients, business managers were more likely to be obsessive-compulsive, narcissistic, or histrionic. A 2010 study of management executives from 7 companies found that 4% of the sample could be defined confidently as psychopathic, but some estimates put it as high as 10%, far, far outpacing its occurrence among everyday American working people. Now, James Silver, in a 2012 Atlantic article, defines psychopathy as follows, and does this not describe Wall Street to a T? Psychopathy is a psychological condition based on well-established diagnostic criteria, including superficial charm, conning and manipulative behavior, a lack of empathy and remorse, and a willingness to take risks. So we're really surprised when Martin Shkreli drops out of school at the age of 17 to intern on Wall Street and becomes a hedge fund manager. He buys the rights to Daraprim and jacks the price up from $13.50 per pill to $750 per pill. His name for a generation will be synonymous with the most inhuman greed imaginable, and that's the moral education you get on Wall Street. He was arrested late last year for securities fraud, reminding us in turn of Madoff, who defrauded with his schemes some fabulously wealthy people and so was locked up. It seems ripping off members of your own Wall Street gang will get you in serious trouble, but price gouging terminally ill people for medicine, that'll make people mad at you on the internet, but not much, not much more. It is pleasing to think, though, that Shkreli's reputation is ruined, and that in a calculated pose of contrition, he offered a large sum of money to the Sanders campaign, which was refused, tainted as it was by the greed of Big Pharma, which Sanders is so vocal in condemning. Now, I do not agree with every position he holds or every vote that Sanders has ever cast, but I don't need a checklist if I know he wants to more than double the federal minimum wage, close private prisons, promote community policing, institute universal health care and free higher education, demilitarize the police, close private prisons, and most appealing of all, his promise to break up the super banks that caused the financial collapse, and which have never had a tighter grip over our country or over world affairs, including Citigroup, which is Hillary Clinton's #1 donor and puppeteer. When I think of the many working people I've known, and alongside whom I've worked throughout my life, toiling so long for so much less than we deserve, laughed at by jet-set leeches who think they can have it all, I can only say that to me, voting for a man who will break up the banking cartels and double our wages is a righteous act. I refuse, however, to be cowed into thinking that what I do the other 364.99 days of the year is somehow less important, and for that reason I'm so excited about all I'm learning here and all I hope to accomplish to improve the life of the American worker and his or her suffering family, and to throw off the tyranny of Wall Street and its insane financial oligarchy, the source of all conflict and injustice in America and around the world.